Fox News alert. The fight against ISIS is taking center stage today as a Senate Armed Services Committee hearing gets underway on Capitol Hill. You're looking at it live. Oh, we are monitoring it for sure because Defense Secretary Ash Carter will testify. He's expected to. And it's just a day after President Obama made a rare visit to the Pentagon. The president announcing the battle against the terror group is having mixed results, and he's calling for patience. How much patience? Well, committee chairman John McCain saying, quote, President Obama's comments today reveal the disturbing degree of self-delusion that characterizes the administration's campaign. None of the so-called progress that the president cited suggests that we are on a path to success. And when you're not winning in warfare, John McCain says, you are losing. General Jack Keane, retired four-star general, chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, also a Fox News military analyst. These are some harsh words for what is the president's perceived understanding of what it will take. General Keane, good morning. What are your thoughts?
Well, good morning to you, Jamie. Good to see you. I certainly agree with Senator McCain's characterization here, sadly to say. I mean, my reaction to the president's comments is that when he talks about it's going to take a long time to defeat ISIS, this is a generational struggle of ideas. What he is doing, he's surrendering to ISIS's desire to conduct a protracted campaign that is generational. And believe me, they are not just conducting a campaign of ideas. This is a war that they are prosecuting. And what the president fails to understand is why ISIS is so different. They are not a terrorist organization, Jamie, operating in the shadows, which would take many, many years to accomplish their goals. This is a terrorist organization that morphed into an army because they were able to establish a base of operations in Syria.
Not just one base, too, General. They are bifurcated, fractured. They're all over the place. It's trouble to keep an eye on all of them. Some are going from Gitmo and maybe re-enlisting. The question is, though, could we be saying one thing, the president, have patience, but doing something else? What's happening in theater right now?
Absolutely. But let me just say, Jamie, the base of operations in Syria is crucial because it's from there that they became an invasion army. It's from there that they've expanded into 7 countries. It's from there that they have a worldwide following where people are willing to kill their own citizens. So that is what the president is failing to understand, that this is a very different radical Islamic organization.
Who can fix it then, General?
It needs a very strong military component to deal with it. It's not just countering finances or undermining ideology. It needs the United States with a sincere and genuine coalition. He says 60 countries. That 60-country coalition is in name only. We need countries to come together to defeat this organization militarily as well as undermine its finances and its ideology. Otherwise, if we don't stop it in the near term, as you suggest, the barbarism continues, the killing continues. This will go on for years.
Every day, General, every day is one day too long. So we're sending 450 troops now, right, to Iraq? Is that going to solve it? I know Navy SEALs personally who are going. Are they tasked with putting an end to ISIS?
No, because they do not have a role that is going to be effective or decisive. What we are doing in Iraq is significantly insufficient in terms of arming the Kurds, training and arming the Sunni tribes, who we're just getting around to after a year, and insufficiently providing resources to an Iraqi army that has a long way to go before it becomes effective. And more significant than that, because the main effort should be Syria, we have no effective ground force to deal with ISIS in Syria, and it's the only way that ISIS will be stopped in Syria, and the only way that ISIS will be stopped worldwide.
General, I hate when you say it, because you're saying we don't have enough people there to fight it. The president is being called delusional by many, including Senator McCain, who certainly knows war and war methodology. We're looking today at this hearing. Let me get your thoughts on what you think we might hear here. I'm wondering, I definitely want to pay attention to not only the opening remarks, but the questions that come. Senator McCain will be one of those on the Armed Forces Committee who will, I'm sure, ask the tough questions. What do you want to know today?
Well, I think the senator will certainly push them on what their definition of success is. And in terms of what's happening in Iraq and what's happening in Syria. They'll like to say that they've reclaimed 25% of their territory, but when you look at it from a military person's perspective, ISIS controls about the same amount of territory in Iraq that they did a year ago. And in Syria, they've expanded, and they've expanded into seven other countries. So they have to push them on how could you possibly suggest in any way, shape, or form that we are succeeding in our effort, that our strategy shouldn't be under some kind of review.
Policy.
So he'll push him in Iraq as it being insufficient. And I think he'll also push him in Syria for what are we going to do about it in Syria. Secretary Kerry has been trying.
General, let me ask you a favor. Senator McCain is speaking. No, you're going to do what you can do, because I'd like you to listen, and then we'd like to come back. Let's listen to what's going on in the chamber and see if we learn that.
For its defense. China's destabilizing behavior also poses a growing challenge to U.S. national interest. Its reclamation and militarization of vast land features in the South China Sea, its continued military build-up, and, of course, its blatant and undeterred cyber attacks against the United States. Iran is expanding its malign activities and hegemonic ambitions across the Middle East, as we see clearly in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, and elsewhere. And yet some in the administration seem to operate under the delusion that a nuclear agreement could lead to a new modus vivendi with the Islamic Republic. And in Syria, Bashar Assad's slaughter of his own people, which has been the single greatest contributor to the rise and continued success of ISIL, goes on and on and on, aided by Russia, Iran, and Hezbollah. For 4 years, the president has said Assad must go as a part of a political transition in Syria, but conditions on the ground have never allowed it. Tragically, that remains true today. What each of these growing threats has in common is a failure of deterrence brought on by a dangerous perception of American weakness and lack of resolve, which our adversaries have taken as a provocative invitation for hostility. When it comes to ISIL, President Obama's comments yesterday at the Pentagon reveal the disturbing degree of self-delusion that characterizes the administration's thinking. It is right, but ultimately irrelevant, to point out, as the president did, that we have conducted thousands of airstrikes, taken out many ISIL fighters and much equipment, and pushed it out of some territory. None of the so-called progress that the president cited suggests that we are on a path to success. Since U.S. and coalition airstrikes began last year, ISIL has continued to enjoy battlefield successes, including taking Ramadi and other key terrain in Iraq, holding over half the territory in Syria and controlling every border post between Iraq and Syria. Moreover, the longer ISIL remains undefeated in Iraq and Syria, the more potent its message is to those around the world who may be radicalized and inspired to join the group and spread violence and mayhem on its behalf. It's not that we're doing nothing. It's that there is no compelling reason to believe that anything we are doing currently will be sufficient to achieve the president's long-stated goal of degrading and ultimately destroying ISIL, either in the short term or the long term. Our means and our current level of effort are not aligned with our ends. That suggests we are not winning, and when you're not winning in war, you are losing. The reality today is that ISIL continues to gain territory in Iraq and Syria while expanding its influence and presence across the Middle East, Africa, and Central Asia. There is no responsible ground force in either Iraq or Syria that is both willing and able to take territory away from ISIL and hold it.
That is an argument we've heard for some time now. As Senator McCain continues his opening statement, there will be some very tough questions during this hearing, a day after the president went to the Pentagon and said the United States will not play whack-a-mole against ISIS fighters in Iraq or Syria or elsewhere. So we'll see how the others respond now.